What's up, YouTube? Today we're going to be looking at the Open Great League once again, and the team we're taking a look at today is Annihilate, Normal Cast Form, and Corviknight. Now, of course, the main focus of today's video is Normal Cast Form, and the reason we're taking a look at Normal Cast Form is because Weather Ball got a buff this season, and the coverage on this Pokemon is actually really interesting. Think Credilli. I mean, it's got very solid bulk. You can see its stats there with an overall stat product of 1994, which is very solid. And then good coverage with Weather Ball, Rock, and Energy Ball. Like I said on Credilli, shares that fighting weakness, but doesn't share any of its other weaknesses. So without further ado, let's hop into some battles. Okay, into the first match, we've got Annihilate into Corviknight. Now, this is an okay lead because counters are neutral and sand attacks don't do much damage. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw 4 counters and then catch the Air Cutter onto my CASTFORM because CASTFORM can absorb this damage very comfortably, but in comes a Primeape, and unfortunately for me, this of course is a terrible matchup because fighters are my only weakness. I will full send an Energy Ball. That connects. We get the defense drop of the Energy Ball as well, but it's not enough to one-shot. They will full send a close combat in order to pick up the knockout, and now I can just come back with my Annihilate, look for the counter farm down. The opponent does make it to a Rage Fist, but this won't be enough to one-shot, so I will let this go. It does about 50%, and if that Corviknight comes back in, I'm going to do the exact same thing. So 4 counters, coming with my own Corviknight, but the opponent, expecting it this time, ends up over-farming and committing to the payback, so I will commit the shield. It is the payback, so huge that we grab that shield, and I'm hoping that if my opponent wants to play out this 2-shield scenario and whatever is in the back doesn't want to see my Corviknight, then I can snipe with my Annihilate because I have a charge move banked and ready to go. They are going to outpace me, of course, because they did have an energy lead, but we get a correct shield on both paybacks, and I don't feel like baiting here, so I will full send the payback, making sure that I grab that final shield from my opponent before I come in with my Annihilate. But here comes the snipe. We get the Rage Fist off. This won't be enough to knock out the Corviknight, but it will put them into the red health range. They now will be able to pick up the knockout with the Air Cutter, but if what they have in back is truly that weak to the Corviknight, then we should be in a pretty good position. We're able to outpace making it to the Air Cutter before they make it to the payback, and Air Cutter from this range does pick up the knockout. What's in the back? It's a Gastrodon, so no wonder my opponent did not want to come into this matchup. They will end up throwing some energy here. I'm trying to judge if this is Air Cutter plus payback range or if I can just full send a payback. I decide to just full send a payback, hoping that it does one shot, and if it doesn't, I can always outpace and make it to another Air Cutter. And that's exactly what we're going to do. On 1 HP, Corviknight makes it to a last second Air Cutter, and Air Cutter is enough to pick up the knockout on the Gastrodon, and we are able to take a Game 1 win. Okay, into the next match, we've got Annihilate into Marowak. This is the non-Shadow Marowak, but this is a very neutral lead. Of course, they have neutral Mud Slaps and Bone Clubs, and we have neutral counters and Rage Fist, but we do have access to super effective Ice Punch here. So the opponent ends up going for the catch onto their Azumarill. I decide to come in with my CASTFORM. Now you might be wondering, why aren't you coming in with your Steel? Well, that's because Corviknight actually doesn't have a great matchup there. With Payback being resisted and Ice Beam and Bubbles both being neutral, it's actually not a great matchup for Corviknight, especially down energy. So instead, I come in with my CASTFORM. They're actually a Hydro Pump Azumarill. I will overfarm here, looking to pick up the knockout with a second Energy Ball before my opponent is able to make it to a second charge move, and the opponent will just let that go. So we are able to win switch with the CASTFORM. That's huge. Does the opponent know CASTFORM counts is the question, because here comes a Weather Ball Rock. The opponent does let it go. They know they can live that, and now we can align our Corviknight against the Marowak. Now this is a non-shadow, so I'm very comfortably no shielding a Rock Slide, but they didn't even farm up to it. I believe that was only enough for a Bone Club, and in the back is Credilli. I end up throwing an alignment, which is very unfortunate, and I probably should have come in with my Annihilate right away, but because I didn't, now I'm kind of stuck in this matchup. I could have gone for a catch there, but I wanted them to just throw their energy because 1 Grass Knot will be enough to pick up the knockout on my Annihilate. Now finally in comes the Annihilate. We will be able to make it to a super effective Ice Punch. The opponent will let that go. And I do have 2 shields here, so the question is, do I want to commit a shield? I decide no. They pick up the knockout with the Grass Knot. Back in comes the Corviknight. Corviknight able to outpace, make it to the payback. Is the opponent willing to commit a shield here, or are they going to let their Credilli go? No, they are going to commit the shield, making sure that I cannot reset this debuff and that I am permanently debuffed from the Rock Tomb for the remainder of this game. But that is okay because in comes the Marowak. Once again, I believe this is only enough for a Bone Club, but I will have to respect it because I am getting quite low at this point and I need to farm up to basically back-to-back moves. because payback number 1 will be enough to pick up the knockout on the Marowak, but I also need to outpace the Credilli to another payback. Can we get there? Yes, we can. And once again, 2 games in a row, Corviknight is going to take this endgame at 1 HP, and we are able to grab that win. Into the next match, we've got Annihilate into Corviknight. We've seen this matchup before, so we're going to play it out the exact same, throwing 4 counters and then pivoting into the CASTFORM, and once again, we get the catch. And notice that we also sneak a Hex there. That is really important because we can typically outpace whatever decides to come in. In comes a Swampert. That is absolutely crazy. They must just not have a good answer to the normal CASTFORM. I will tank 1 Hydro, and now I will go for the Weather Ball bait, anticipating that my opponent wants to just 1-shield farm down, but my opponent ends up no shielding that. Maybe they don't know about the energy ball coverage of the CASTFORM. Many people don't know the coverage of this Pokemon. So we full send the energy ball, it one-shots the Swampert, and now we've won switch. So now I can potentially align my own Corviknight against their Corviknight. And yes, they do have an energy lead just by a slight margin, but that's okay because we have a slight health lead, and it's kind of going to come down to how much damage this payback does. But for some reason, the opponent baits with an air cutter. I have no idea why. But now we can full send the payback. They do end up getting that shield call correct. And now their attack is boosted, so their payback will do even more damage, but it does not matter because if I save both shields for my Annihilate, they can never connect with an air cutter and I can fully counter farm them down. So I just need to connect with 1 payback to put them in counter farm down range, and there it is. So now in comes the Annihilate, and in the back is a Gastrodon. However, Gastrodon has double resisted body slams in his matchup, which means they need to farm up to the water pulse to even threaten a shield. I am getting quite low from these mud slaps at this point, but we are boosting our attack over and over. So adding up these counters, the opponent will finally commit the last shield, and they do have enough for a water pulse here, so I will end up respecting it with a shield. The opponent baits with a body slam, but guess what? That means this is only another body slam. I will save my final shield for the Corviknight in case they are able to make it to a charge move, and they had the charge move bank, so no shielding that is absolutely massive. They do come in with the air cutter, but now I'm able to outpace, make it to the Rage Fist. Rage Fist will be enough to knock out the Corviknight from the sky, and it does. Back in comes the Gastrodon, only to get countered farm down, and we are able to take that win. Okay, into the next match, we've got Annihilate into a Carbink. So this is a fantastic lead. Looks like the opponent might be lagging a little bit here, so I am just going to go for the Rage Fist right away. If this stalls in my charge move, it means the opponent has lagged, but no, it doesn't. In comes a Dusknoir, in comes the CASTFORM, the opponent resigns the match, and we are able to take that game. I just left that one in because I thought it was funny. But into the next match, another good lead. We've got Annihilate into Dugong, but this opponent is staying in this matchup, and I literally cannot imagine why, unless it's that team with Bastion in the back. That's kind of the only thing I can think of. Probably Marowak, Bastion, and just the ABA style. I've never really understood why you'd want to run that team. I am going to commit the shield here, anticipating that it is that team, and that I will need my Annihilate later. I look for the full counter farm down, and if that Marowak comes in, I'm going to connect with an Ice Punch first, knowing that my attack is lowered, but I want to at least do some damage, and then in comes CASTFORM. We end up grabbing the shield, which is really nice. You could argue that if I'm reading a Bastion in the back, I probably should have come in with my Corviknight instead, knowing that I have double super effective sand attacks for the Bastion in the back, but they would have super effective flamethrowers. So that's why I decided to come in CASTFORM, knowing that I could always align my Annihilate onto their Bastion and then their Marowak onto my Corviknight and be in a very good position in the end game. And you know what? CASTFORM is so extremely spammy. The pacing on these charge moves allowing me to get to so many charge moves. Back in comes the Marowak. Do they know about the energy of CASTFORM? I go for the Weather Ball bait and they end up coming to shield. That is absolutely massive because now in comes the Corviknight. I will respect a Shadow Rock Slide because it will do slightly more damage, and I'm not anticipating that my opponent wants to commit or can do a bait there, but now the opponent does have enough for another Rock Slide. But now I can look to overfarm in this matchup, making sure that a payback will be enough to pick up the knockout, and if it does, they will be forced to throw energy against the Corviknight because guess what? These sand attacks are going to tear through the HP of Bastion. They're forced to throw their energy. They're nearly at, I think they're at 100 energy, but it does not matter because we can get the full counter farm down, and we are able to take that win. Into the next match, we've got Annihilate into Scizor. So this is actually a better matchup if you're the Shadow Annihilate because you can one shield farm down the Scizor. But as the non-Shadow, that's not really the case. But the opponent instead decides to catch out of this matchup onto their Azumarill. But I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to come in with my CASTFORM, knowing that I will be able to outpace this Pokemon. and I have super effective coverage, and we have some decent bulk, so we can take these charge moves from the Azumarill no problem, even a Hydro Pump as we've seen in the previous match. The opponent overfarms by a little bit too much, maybe not underestimating the energy generation of the CASTFORM. We get to back-to-back energy balls before they even throw a charge move. Back in comes the Scizor, but guess what? We have neutral coverage here with Weather Ball as well. Night Slash is not enough to pick up the knockout, so now here comes the Weather Ball. Is this going to grab a shield from my opponent? Yes, it is, but now in comes Annihilate, looking for the snipe down. We can't quite get it, but I'm anticipating it's the Credilli in the back. That was a very common team in the past season, so I commit the shield. We get the counter farm down. What's that Pokemon going to be? The opponent resigns the match. It must have been the Credilli, so we are able to take that win. Into the next match, we've got Annihilate into Steelix. So this is another good lead, and the opponent is once again staying in this matchup. They can look to connect with a super effective Psychic Fangs, and then their Thunder Fangs will be doing even more damage. However, they're probably going to do about the same amount of damage as our super effective counters and neutral Rage Fists are. But the opponent ends up pivoting after I commit the shield into a Dusclops, and guess who has the exact same pacing as Dusclops? 3-3-3-2 to the Weather Balls. That is absolutely incredible, and we win CMP in this matchup. So I can always overfarm knowing that they have to go Ice Punch because that is their only neutral coverage. It's also non-stab. Of course, all of our charge moves and fast moves are non-stab as well, but because we double resist their fast move and their main charge move, this is actually a very dominant matchup for the CASTFORM. Now looking to pick up the knockout with the Energy Ball on the CMP tie, and we do. Back in comes the Steelix, but guess what? Steelix is getting outpaced as well, making it to yet another Energy Ball. The pacing on CASTFORM is just truly incredible. The opponent ends up committing the shield. Looks like we're going to get to another one, but the opponent makes a really nice catch onto a Araquanid. This is still neutral damage, and we still have the alignment that we need, so now in comes Corviknight. We get the defense fall as well. Their fast move is double resisted, so they resign the match, and we are able to take that win. Into the next match, another Shadow Scizor. So let's see, does the opponent want to play it out the same way that the last one did, catching out of this matchup with a Rage Fist? No. Instead, they're going to throw their energy right away when they get to the Night Slash. I will commit the shield, and then I will instantly throw the Rage Fist to boost my counters back up. Not back up, but boost my counter so I can look for the full farm down. It looks like we're not quite going to get it, so instead I'm going to catch out of this matchup onto the CASTFORM. A Night Slash is neutral damage. It'll do some okay chip from a Shadow Scizor, but I know this is a very safe Pokemon to come into. And in the back is a Credilli from my opponent, so battle of the rock grass coverage Pokemon. We're able to connect with the Energy Ball on the CMP tie. That does some pretty solid chip. Now the opponent will connect with a Rock Tomb, but it's not enough to pick up the knockout. Can we get to another charge move? It looks like not another Energy Ball, so we'll have to just settle for the Weather Ball here. Weather Ball actually does do slightly more damage, or more damage per energy than the Energy Ball, but Energy Ball of course does more damage. I'm able to come in with the Annihilate, snipe with the Rage Fist, get the knockout, but in the back is a Jellicent, and I've just given my opponent a massive farm down, so they have a huge energy lead. They're already at a Shadow Ball, so I will end up committing the shield. Is it going to be the full set of the Shadow Ball? It is. That is a massive shield call that we get right, but now they can throw all of their energy pretty much whenever they want it because we have no shields left in play. I will end up going for the Air Cutter bait. We also get the boost of the attack, which is massive. The opponent looks like they waited a turn there, making sure we wouldn't catch out. But guess what? All we have to do is make sure they're in the middle of a Hex, and now we have a super effective payback. Locked and loaded. This will knock out the Jellicent. Back in comes the Scizor, only to get Sand Attack farmed down, and we are able to take that win. Into the next match, we've got a fantastic lead. We've got Annihilate into Bastion, and the opponent safe switches into a Moongus, and I think I make an incorrect play here. I end up coming in with my Corviknight when I think I probably should have come in with CASTFORM because this is an Astonish user. Yes, we will be able to outpace this Pokemon, making it to the back-to-back Air Cutters, so this is a very solid matchup in the Zero Shield scenario for the Corviknight. However, if the opponent wanted to play out the twos, I bet they could fully farm up down after connecting with a charge move. But that's okay because we do outpace in the Zero Shield scenario. Back in comes the opponent's Bastiodon, but our attack is double boosted. These sand attacks are double super effective, and we are doing so much damage. We also have neutral coverage with payback. That puts the opponent into the yellow health range, and in the back is a Charizard. So Charizard will be hit with the Air Cutter. We actually grab a shield. That is absolutely massive because now all we have to do is make it to the double super effective Weather Ball. I will let the first one go, and guess what? The opponent goes for an Air Cutter bait. That is really unfortunate. They make it to yet another Air Cutter, but Charizard is so glassy that I know I can counter farm it down or just connect with a Rage Fist in order to pick up the knockout. So I will just go for the double super effective rock Weather Ball, and that does grab the final shield from the opponent. So in comes the Annihilate. I know the opponent would get to the Air Cutter on the CMP tie, so I decided not to throw, knowing that these Embers are not doing that much damage and that I can pick up the knockout with the Rage Fist before they make it to yet another Air Cutter. And Rage Fist from this range picks up the knockout, and now we have a 1-shield Annihilate against the Bastion, and we are able to take that win. Into the next match, we've got Annihilate into Zapdos, and I'm about to show you why Shadow Zapdos is an absolute fraud. Its typing is truly amazing, but unfortunately for my opponent, my counters are doing more damage than their Thunder Shocks, even though mine are resisted and theirs are neutral. I'm going to start boosting my attack, knowing that it looks like I can probably farm them down in the 2-shield scenario, because this is a bit of a core breaker for this team. Of course, Annihilate and Corviknight are both weak to it, but Annihilate's going to show why it's not actually that weak to the Zapdos. I am going to go for the Rage Fist as soon as I get it, hoping that I can look for the full counter farm down. The opponent commits the double shield as well. Can we get there? No, we cannot. So instead, I'm going to catch a Drill Peck where it is resisted on my Corviknight, hoping that the Zapdos is my opponent's answer to a flyer, but instead comes in a Ice Fang Shadow Hippowdon, able to outpace me to the Weather Ball. That does some pretty solid chip, but because they have no shields left in play, I can now go for the harder hitting payback. This will do some very solid chip to the Glassy Shadow Hippowdon. It connects, they get the Ice Fang farm down, but that is okay because we can come in with the Annihilate. This will force their hand. They do not have enough for a Scorching Sand, so we take that resisted Weather Ball, and in the back is Marowak, and in a 0-shield scenario, this is where CASTFORM is going to feast against these Mud Slappers, because Bone Club and the Mud Slaps are just not enough to pick up the knockout. I will overfarm as much as I can, now going to look to pick up the knockout with the Energy Ball. It's not quite enough. Looking for the farm down, the opponent also committing to the farm down, knowing they needed to come out with a move loaded, but we get to the Weather Ball, that's resisted, but it picks up the knockout. 1 Hex to farm down the Hippowdon, and we are able to take that win. Actually, there's still the Zapdos, but we can fully counter farm that down, and now we're able to take that win. But yeah, his Shadow Zapdos might be a fraud. Same with Emolga, they're just so glassy, which is really unfortunate because their typing is so cool. But yeah, I mean, I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say that normal CASTFORM is really strong. I think it's super underrated in the current meta. I believe that the water form of the CASTFORM is also extremely strong, just because that Water Gun plus Weather Ball combo is very solid, and then it has Thunder for coverage. I think Lantern in seasons past, right? But overall, this Pokemon was a ton of fun to play. Honestly, a great safe swap. As soon as you give it a Hex advantage, it can turn a lot of losing matchups into winning matchups, and not as many people know about the coverage of CASTFORM as they might know on something like a Credilli, which is extremely common. But yeah, before I wrap up this video, I want to say a special thank you to the expert trainer members on this channel: Benny Hemlock, Dark Green Mustache, Sohan Patil, Eliana, Perry G, and Blue Nation. Sorry, is that Perry G or Perry C? I'm actually forgetting it. I'm so sorry. But I also want to say an extra special thank you to the Legend Trainer members on this channel: Andrew Pitten, Moosachu, Noodleman, Speedstar, Estros, Fast Eddie Boss, CD Slaskis, and Castle. Thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, peace.